Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Daniel Harper grew up feeling the weight of a difference few could understand. From an early age, words got stuck in his throat, as if an invisible force stopped him from speaking when he wanted to. Every attempt to express himself became a battle against his own body. His stutter turned simple moments into real trials, and over time, he preferred silence to humiliation. At school, he avoided raising his hand or participating in any activity that required speaking. When classmates laughed or mocked his blocks, he pretended not to hear, even though inside he felt his soul shrinking, like someone slowly fading away. Years passed, but the fear of speaking in public remained. Daniel searched for jobs where silence was allowed, almost expected. He became a refrigeration technician, a profession that gave him the chance to work more with his hands than with words. He felt comfortable taking apart compressors, examining tubing, and repairing air conditioning systems. There, among wires, metal parts, and tools, nobody expected him to be eloquent. He was skilled, dedicated, and quiet, and that was enough. Still, despite all the barriers he built to protect himself, Daniel's heart longed for affection, from someone who could see him beyond his broken speech. That person appeared when he least expected it. Linda Carter worked as a waitress at a diner he often visited while on job assignments outside town. She had a welcoming way about her, smiled easily, and treated every customer like an old friend. Daniel always watched her from afar, admiring how effortlessly she communicated, how naturally she used words without fear or hesitation. To him, it was fascinating. For months, he limited himself to nods and quick thank yous whenever she served his coffee or the hamburger he always ordered. Then one ordinary day, she started a conversation. It wasn't much, she just asked if he was from around there or just passing through. With effort, Daniel managed to say he worked nearby, fixing refrigeration systems in local stores. Linda didn't show impatience with his pace or laugh, like so many others had throughout his life. She simply listened, sincerely. That simple, spontaneous gesture made Daniel feel at ease for the first time in a long time. The conversations became regular, and as the months went by, Daniel realized he no longer feared speaking around her so much. Linda had an amazing ability to fill silences with understanding, without needing long explanations or excuses. She talked about life, the challenges of supporting her sick mother and younger brother, her dreams of leaving town someday and seeing the ocean. Daniel listened to everything with interest, admiring the strength that seemed to drive Linda every day. After a year of casual meetings and longer conversations, they began dating officially. Linda accepted his invitations, even though Daniel sometimes fumbled badly while asking her out. She always said she liked his way, that she felt safe with him, that his presence was calm and different from other men she had known. In time, they fell in love. They married in a small ceremony surrounded by a few friends and family members. They had 2 daughters, Emily and Olivia. Daniel threw himself completely into fatherhood. When needed, he worked double shifts to ensure financial stability for the family. At birthdays, he was always the first to decorate the house, even though he felt anxious about having to speak when cutting the cake. He took the girls to the park, taught Emily to ride a bicycle, and stayed awake entire nights when Olivia had a fever. Each small gesture was an attempt to be the father he never had, the man he hoped his daughters would admire, even if his voice faltered. With Linda, things remained peaceful, although over time he noticed she seemed to want more from life than he might ever offer. She mentioned traveling, opening her own business, owning a bigger house. Daniel listened, tried to participate, but often chose silence, believing it avoided conflict. He believed their love was enough, that the small daily joys, like preparing coffee for her before work or playing with the girls in the backyard, were proof of a silent, unshakable commitment. He didn't suspect fate was already preparing something that would destroy those certainties. Daniel had worked so hard to build a stable life, to overcome the limitations his stutter imposed, that he never imagined the biggest blow would come from where he least expected, from within his own home. The man who spent years trying to find his voice was about to discover that even in silence, pain can scream louder than any word. The call for that job came late in the afternoon, when Daniel was thinking about ending the day and heading home, where Linda and the girls were waiting. It was an emergency. The cooling system of a restaurant connected to a motel had stopped working, and the owner, desperate, needed someone to fix it before nightfall. Daniel accepted without hesitation. He grabbed his tools, packed them in the car, and left. He knew it might take some time, but it was just another job he performed with precision and skill. When he arrived, he focused entirely on the task. He opened panels, checked tubing, replaced a burned-out part, tested the equipment until everything worked properly. He finished the job with his usual efficiency, but as he was about to leave, heavy rain began falling, and he decided to wait inside his car until it eased up. He sat there, engine off, staring ahead as heavy drops slid down the windshield, when movement to his left caught his attention. He saw a car parking near the motel's side entrance. From where he was, he noticed the passenger door open and Linda stepping out. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He immediately recognized the way she walked, her hair tied back casually, the coat she wore often. Beside her, a man exited the driver's seat, walked toward her, and placed his hand on her back in an intimate way, guiding her toward a familiar place. Together, they entered the motel without hesitation or glances around. Daniel remained motionless, his hands gripping the steering wheel as his chest filled with anguish he'd never felt before. His mind tried to find explanations, justifications, anything to soften the scene he had just witnessed, but his eyes had seen clearly. There was no doubt. Linda, the woman he shared his life with, the woman with whom he built a family, was here, walking into a motel with another man. For several minutes, he stayed frozen. He thought about getting out of the car, running over, demanding an explanation, yelling, crying, begging. But he knew deep down his voice would fail him. Just like it always did during critical moments, like job interviews, school presentations, every time he needed to stand up for himself. And the mere idea of confronting that man, who looked confident, perhaps smug, made him feel even smaller. He feared hearing what he secretly already knew. He feared the man would look at him with contempt and say what he dreaded most, that he was weak, that he couldn't even keep his own wife by his side. So he stayed there, seated, eyes fixed on the door through which Linda had disappeared. Time passed, though he couldn't tell how much. He remained absorbed, breathing heavily, thoughts confused, while the rain continued indifferently, unaware of the pain settling in his chest. When he finally returned home, Linda arrived an hour later, acting as if nothing had happened. She smiled, talked with the girls, organized things in the kitchen. Daniel watched the scene like someone watching a play, like someone observing someone else performing a role that no longer belonged to her. He waited for the moment when the girls went upstairs and then, with whatever voice he could gather, said he was leaving. She turned around, confused, asking what was happening. He, without beating around the bush, simply said he knew, that he saw her enter the motel with another man. Linda, as if she already had an excuse prepared, replied that he was a friend, that nothing happened, that Daniel was exaggerating. Daniel listened but didn't believe. He didn't need further explanations. What he saw was enough. He looked at her one last time and, with a shattered heart, began packing his bags. Linda tried to stop him, repeated that he was misunderstanding, begged him to talk calmly, but he kept going. He grabbed clothes, documents, work tools. He passed by the girls' room, where both slept peacefully, unaware that upon waking, their father would already have left. He approached them, kissed their foreheads tenderly, held back tears to avoid waking them. Before leaving, he told Linda he would stay in touch, that he would always send money for whatever they needed, that he loved his daughters more than anything. But he needed to go, needed to find a new path because the one he had followed until now was destroyed by a single scene he would never erase from memory. He carefully closed the door, carried his suitcase to the car, and without looking back, drove away, heading down the road with no specific destination, only certain that from this point forward, his life would never be the same again. Daniel drove for hours without a clear destination, letting the road decide for him as if movement alone could push the pain away. He stopped in a small town far enough that familiar faces wouldn't find him, but not so distant as to lose contact with his daughters. He needed time, space, and above all, silence. He found a modest room in a simple boarding house to spend the first few days while he figured out what to do. He woke up early, walked around the unfamiliar town, entered small markets and stared at shelves without real interest, just trying to keep his mind occupied. He spoke to almost no one, and when someone started a conversation, he responded minimally, not due to unwillingness, but lack of strength. When his money started to run low, he understood he needed to restart his life somehow. He found an ad on a community bulletin board. They were looking for someone to work as a janitor at a nursing home on the outskirts of town. The salary was modest, but included a small apartment downstairs, enough to guarantee shelter and some stability. He went there, spoke with the administrator, and without much difficulty, got the job. The next day, he started working. The tasks were simple but required patience and strength. He cleaned hallways, repaired jammed doors, changed light bulbs, and fixed heating systems when they malfunctioned. These duties filled his days and emptied his mind, which, for him, was a blessing. The apartment where he lived was small, with only essentials, a bed, a sink, and an old cabinet. But Daniel didn't need more. That space, hidden downstairs, seemed perfectly suited for someone wanting to isolate themselves from the world, for someone already carrying too many scars. The first few months were lived in this quiet rhythm, where days blurred into nights and weeks passed without major news. Until one morning, while fixing a lock on one of the dining room doors, he met Claire Reed. She worked at the nursing home as a nursing assistant, and while crossing the hallway, she paused noticing he struggled to make the tool work. She signaled offering help and with a simple gesture pointed exactly where he should turn the key to unlock the mechanism. Daniel thanked her with a glance but didn't speak, just smiled. It was only when Claire pulled out a small notebook and started writing that he realized she was deaf. She handed him the note reading, "This lock always causes problems." Daniel smiled again, this time more sincerely. Then she made another gesture, the sign for "nice to meet you," and continued on her way. That brief encounter moved him in a way he couldn't explain. For the first time since he left, he felt something different from pain. In the following days, their encounters became more frequent. Claire passed through the hallways while he performed his duties and always made sure to communicate, whether with a note, a gesture, or a smile. Daniel, curious and fascinated by how she seemed happy even without speaking, started taking interest in sign language. He bought a used book from a bookstore, studied at night sitting on the edge of the bed in his small apartment, and tried memorizing the signs, even though learning took time. Slowly, he gained courage to use what he learned. One afternoon, while meeting Claire in the break room, he attempted a few signs. He signed, "Hello," then, "How are you?" and saw her eyes light up with joy. She eagerly responded, teaching new gestures, and without realizing, they formed a bond. With Claire, Daniel experienced a freedom he never imagined possible. For the first time, his stutter wasn't an obstacle, wasn't something he needed to overcome. Beside her, communication happened differently, more pure, without noise, without judgment. This relationship transformed Daniel from the inside out. He began to feel lighter, more motivated. He woke up wanting to leave his room, complete his tasks, cross paths with Claire in the hallways. Gradually, he started accompanying her to the plaza next to the nursing home, where she liked to take some of the elderly residents to enjoy the sun. They spent hours communicating through signs, sharing stories and silence. Claire explained she was born deaf, that for years she faced prejudice and exclusion, but over time learned to transform her disability into strength. Daniel listened and, without speaking, shared his own pains, and she seemed to understand, as if, even without knowing all the details, she could feel the depth of the scars he carried. This relationship brought him something he didn't know he needed: belonging. By her side, he realized there were other ways to express himself, that love and friendship didn't depend on the fluency of words but on the sincerity of gestures and genuine acceptance. With Claire, silences ceased being empty and became full of meaning. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel began to believe that, despite everything he had lost, it was still possible to build something new. Daniel continued his routine at the nursing home, increasingly involved with Claire and the quiet work that comforted him, when he received a phone call that seemed to cut any illusion of stability he had begun to rebuild. It was Emily, his eldest daughter. Her voice sounded more mature, but also weighed down by sadness he didn't want to hear. She told him Linda had sold practically all remaining belongings he had at home. The old bicycle, the tools he cared for so meticulously, even books he had collected since adolescence were discarded as worthless items. Daniel remained silent, holding the phone tightly, as if that could prevent the information from piercing him. Emily continued carefully, choosing her words as if trying not to wound him further. She said Olivia, the younger daughter, had run away from home. No note, no message, no clear indication of where she was. She simply disappeared after Linda revealed that the man she was dating, Richard Holloway, was actually Olivia's biological father. Daniel didn't know how to process this. He sat motionless on the edge of the bed, the phone resting on his leg, while the words echoed in his head. The girl he raised since birth, the one he rocked through feverish nights, the one he took to her first day of school, the one he taught to ride a bicycle, discovered brutally that the man she considered her father didn't share her blood. He felt the ground disappear beneath him. He cried, not out of anger or shame, but deep sorrow, the most intense he had ever felt. He cried like someone losing something that could never be recovered. For days, he wandered the nursing home corridors like a ghost, performing mechanical tasks, but with his soul absent. Claire noticed, even though Daniel never told her. She sensed it in his expression, in slower gestures, in the absence of that subtle glow that used to appear whenever he saw her. She tried, using signs and notes, to comfort him, but he still couldn't share that pain. He needed time. Until one day, he decided he couldn't delay it anymore. He picked up the phone, called Emily again, and asked her to tell him everything she knew about Olivia. The older daughter explained that Olivia was staying in a neighboring town, at a friend's house, and that although she didn't want to talk to Linda, she might agree to meet her father. Daniel didn't think twice. He requested time off work, got in his car, and drove to the town where Olivia was. He arrived at the friend's house, stepped out of the car, and took a deep breath before knocking on the door. When she opened it, she was surprised to see her father standing there, with tired eyes but full of tenderness. Daniel hugged her without saying a word. He simply wrapped his arms around her, just like he always did when she was little and scared of the dark. Then he stepped back slightly, looked into her eyes, and firmly said that regardless of what she had been told, he would always be her father. He said he was there for whatever she needed, that it didn't matter who her biological father was, because to him, she would always be his daughter. Olivia cried, nodded her head, and between sobs said she missed him terribly but couldn't live with her mother anymore after everything she had discovered. Daniel asked what she wanted to do. She thought for a moment and said she preferred returning home, at least to try, at least not to feel like she was running away. Daniel respected her decision. He picked up her suitcase, placed it in the car, and during the drive back, they talked about everything and nothing, just like in the old days. Before dropping her off at the doorstep of the house where Linda now lived with Richard, he stopped, held her hand, and repeated that he would always be there, that she could count on him for everything. He returned to the nursing home with a tight chest, but also with the feeling that, at the very least, he had fulfilled his role as a father until the end. The following days were calmer. Emily called frequently, sharing updates, saying she was thinking about going to college. Claire, sensing he was gradually regaining some lightness, invited him to join her family for Sunday lunch. It was during that meal, sitting at a table filled with people laughing, signing, and communicating harmoniously, that Daniel realized he had found, right there, a new form of family. His relationship with Claire grew stronger. They began making plans, and among them arose the idea of adoption. They didn't speak about it vaguely, it was concrete, something that could happen soon. They visited institutions, heard stories of children, like himself, who needed fresh starts, and soon submitted their application for adoption. A few months later, they received custody of 2 siblings who had lived in a shelter for years. Daniel and Claire welcomed the children with the same love and care they gave each other, and soon the house filled with sounds, laughter, and even occasional childhood fights. Beyond adoption, they also decided to open their home temporarily to vulnerable children. They wanted to provide what Daniel, more than anyone, knew was essential: a home where understanding surpassed judgment, where love wasn't conditional on biology or the words someone could or couldn't pronounce. Emily graduated, and inspired by her father's journey and the love he found with Claire, chose to teach at a school for the deaf, where she now works proudly. Linda, on the other hand, continued her life with Richard. Their relationship, however, was marked by conflicts. Margaret Holloway, Richard's mother, suffered a violent episode that deeply affected Linda. Daniel learned this from Emily but didn't get involved, he only mourned. He knew everyone chose their path and bore its consequences. Meanwhile, Daniel's life transformed completely. He started coordinating activities at the nursing home, organizing events, caring for repairs with even greater dedication. The children he and Claire welcomed filled their home with stories and challenges, but above all, with hope. And in moments of silence, when he looked around, he realized that despite everything he had lost, he had gained far more than he could imagine. His overcoming didn't arrive suddenly as victory, but as a slow, patient construction made of small, courageous choices. Every day moving forward from the past was a step toward a life defined by love, understanding, and resilience. Daniel didn't need revenge, nor did he need to hide. He simply moved forward, proving that even when life seems to collapse, it's possible to gather the pieces and build something even more beautiful. Suspicious of your wife or daughter-in-law? Don't go through what we saw in the video. Check the link in the comments and get the ebook with valuable tips and investigator-approved sites to clear your doubts. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.